pretty much for all of us, like we use a lot of our intuition. Yeah.
That's a lot of it, and because you can't rely entirely on the technical, because then you'll
you
just
cannot.
kind of become boring. You'll wash out. It'll just be formulaic to a fault.
Yes, it's gonna be stiff. Yeah, how you're gonna really express something so not tangible as emotions, right? You have to be feeling while you're creating. Yeah, that's amazing.
Hey folks, before we begin today, I just want to remind you there is a link below to the brushsauceacademy.com website where you can get all the up-to-date information on my services. Now, other important things that you may have missed is that if you do scroll to the bottom, subscribe to the mailer list. I don't spam anybody. I do maybe 4 or 5 emails a year, but you do get access, to the brushes that I use. I haven't created much of them, but the brushes that I actually use. And of course, you get a free tutorial, an in-depth one. I think it's about 2 hours long, breaking down my process. And all just for signing up. Hey folks, I'm back with another special guest and my good friend Kevin Gnutzman, and we're going to talk to him today. He's going to talk about his art. He's going to show us what he's been doing. He's going to show us what he's learned a little bit over the years as well. So welcome to the channel, Kevin.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you.
I followed you, I think, ages ago because I seen some of your medieval town pieces that, right there on your art station. So, like that one right there with the 2 characters, I think is the first piece.
This one. Oh, this one. Yeah,
I think that's the first.
That I actually wrote on the internet after I published this one.
Yeah, I think that was the first piece I see, and I don't know how long ago. Yeah, it's been a couple of years, but I always loved the vibrancy of your work. I love the simplicity of a lot of your surface detail as well. It has a very nice aesthetic to it. Like it takes me back to Windmaker. It reminds me of Zelda. It reminds me of the good stuff I love. So yeah, I've always loved your work. I was always drawn to it. I've been following it for years, but we didn't, start to connect, I think, till earlier, this year, a little while ago, and it's all been great ever since. So happy to finally have you here.
Been liking each other's posts on Instagram for a long time, and I was like, yeah, and then you actually reached me to talk.
Nothing like
damn,
nothing like a bunch of old chaps just buttering each other up on Instagram.
Yes, until we finally got courage to talk with each other. Yeah. That was fun. Yeah, I remember back when you started following me, a couple of years ago on ArtStation, and I was like, man, I really like Tyler's stuff, and I'm glad he liked my stuff too.
And I didn't realize until when you go to the following on any ArtStation thing, and it says who follows you back, and I was actually really shocked and of course happy to see that you followed me back as well. So it's funny how we kind of played virtual tag for many years.
Yeah. And
now we're actually pretty good friends because sometimes it just takes a good conversation to get things rolling. So
yes.
Now how long have you been doing this stuff? Let's start simple.
Oh man, actually let me just say it. I'm 23 years old now, but I started like drawing and painting seriously, like thinking of working with that like 8 years ago. Literally. God, 8 years ago.
I had no idea. We never had that conversation yet, Eddie, guys.
Yeah,
I had no idea you were only 23. Oh my god, that makes me feel a little bit older.
Oh, come on. I did sacrifice a lot of stuff because I was like focused studying, but we're going to go over that.
This might be some of the best work I've ever seen for someone at your age. Like, oh my god.
Thanks a lot, man. And by the way, let me show you. I have here my my very first digital painting I did back in 2012. This one over here. Look at that. Jeez, this is so ugly, man.
I think that's the year I started YouTube, and you were already like busting this out. Oh my god. That was what, 8 years ago, you said? Like, what's
8 years ago.
So that would make you what, like 13 or 14 then?
Yes, I remember I was back in high school, and I was with my small tablet talking to my friends. Man, I just got a tablet, and I'm drawing on my computer, and no one was like, yeah, sure, the computer does everything for you. And I was like, no, man, it's so cool. Yeah, I remember those days.
You had yourself a lot more focused at such a young age. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I think even at your age now, I didn't know what I was doing with myself.
Yeah, I think it's something that my family had a lot of influence on that. My father and my mother was always like, "Yeah, you have to figure things out earlier because it's best for you." And but they weren't very happy when I told them I was going to be an artist. So yeah, that's something that we all kind of have been through with our families
Yeah.
some way, right? Yeah.
Well, this is remarkably impressive. Oh my goodness.
But not all of those drawings were like from 2012. I have some
Yeah.
that were 2014 and some others that I don't know exactly the date. But I actually did study in a really small drawing school we have in my city here. And I was focused on drawing. Back then, I was like super interested in Superman and Marvel and DC world, so I was learning how to draw more realistic stuff. And this is like paper and pen, you know. I didn't have tablet back then. So after that, I learned that there was this digital thing, and then I started to try to mess it, and that was my first drawing.
That's awesome.
Uh, yeah. So you want me to go through
Yeah, let's
to
just go.
briefly draw?
Take us on a ride down a trip
All
down
right.
memory lane.
So back then I didn't know anything at all about like fundamentals and like lighting and bouncing light and color and gesture and character design, none of those things. All I knew was CG Hub. Do you remember these days, CG
I
Hub?
loved CG Hub, and I
The
was actually so bitter when that kind of crash in ArtStation started. I was
Yeah,
reluctant to join ArtStation because I was still kind of pissed about the loss of CG Hub.
yes, I never thought ArtStation would become
Yeah.
such a big deal. Yeah. But yeah, I was like in CG Hub, and back when artists used to use Blogspot. Do you remember these days
Yep.
too? I'm sounding like I'm old, but actually, I'm not old. But yeah,
It's
I've
all in
been
context though. Like that was a long
yeah,
time ago.
yeah, 8 years ago. It's kind of yeah. So I was like looking to these artists, and I didn't know what they were doing. I just tried to mimic. That's what I
Yep.
was doing. You know, I saw a bunch of them doing landscape studies, so I tried to paint and black and white stuff. Even though I didn't know what value means and what we use it for. So yeah, I was trying a bunch of stuff, and I think it's actually a lot of the stuff that I learn here is not like in my it's not literal, you know.
Hmm.
You kind of just by repeating a lot of stuff by looking to other artists, you kind of learn, and it becomes second nature. You know, a lot of the stuff that I learned here became second nature, and later on, I finally understood what black black and white stuff and value stuff and lighting and all that meant. But I already kind of knew after a while what everything was kind of doing. So these are my early studies, and I didn't really knew exactly what was going on. And then jumping a lot ahead, after I graduated from high school, I decided, okay, I'm not going to be an artist because I will not make enough money to live. At least in Brazil, it's
Hmm.
way harder to work with art. We don't have a college degree on art. So what I did, I was like, okay, I'm gonna be an engineer like my father. So I gave up on that for 2 years, and I didn't draw at all. But after this really Peter experience with engineer college, I was like, man, I hate this so much. I'll probably go back to my house and try to be an artist, and that's gonna be it. And thank God my parents they allow me to do that. So
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, if I'm going to do that, I'll have to work like extra hard, super hard. So back to my house after leaving for college to do engineer, I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to go to design school. We have design courses here in Brazil in college. So I was like, okay, it's not really like art, but it's kind of related. So and it was actually great because when I got into design college design course, I met a lot of people that were already like studying to be artists, like I am today. So they told me about like James Gurney book on color
Hmm.
and light, the Frame It Ink from Marco Matteo Mastri, and I was like, damn, there's actually some kind of scientific it's not really scientific, but
Yeah.
there's a way to study, you know. You can name things like value and what it does and how you can use that. And since then I start to actually study. So these are my early studies. You can see that I'm trying to make my composition work with lines, a lot of value contrast here. And then finally, after I really got into all this content, in touch with all this content, and also ArtStation was just starting out back then. So, and I created my account and started to see a lot of artists. So yeah, I started to do more studies that were more focused, you know. So
Can
a
I
lot of
interrupt
writing
you
here.
for a sec?
Yes,
Because
sorry.
you're an educator too now, and
Yes.
something I always contend with my students is a lot of people hesitate to make art stations accounts, right? Because they don't feel they're good enough, and they don't feel their work is at appropriate level, to kind of start posting them. For you at this point, when did you know was a great time for you personally to kind of make that account, make it almost like a legit, it's like a badge. Hey, I'm an artist. You're being brave, right? You're putting yourself out there. Um, what was it for
And
you
that's
that
actually an interesting question, because since I start at a very young age, back in those days, I was already posting on internet. I was not posting on CG Hub. I was just posting on my Facebook. So because I was like so young, I didn't really care, like, oh, this is what people are going to see, and that's how my work's going to be perceived, and that's the way I'm going to get jobs. So that was not my concern back then. I was young. I was not really looking for work back then. I was just trying to learn. So I keep on posting since my early days back in 2012, and I never stopped. So this question, like, oh, I'm not feeling secure to post, never came to me, because I was always posting and sharing with, at first, with a lot of people that were not artists, like family and friends. But yeah, and I remember back when I got in touch with other people that were starting and wanting to be artists, and they were not used to post on internet. They told me, "Oh man, I feel so insecure about posting stuff online." And I
yeah
was like, "Man, you just have to put your best out there." And at least for me right now, it's a lot about consistency. You know, some people, they think you have to have like the most high end amazing work out there, when sometimes it's just your own journey with the people that follow you, and eventually people are going to notice you.
yeah
So
I think eventually, right, inevitably that will happen. Especially
yes,
with the
yes.
consistent.
And I'm glad I've posted my early stuff, because I can look back and see, oh man, this is what I was doing back then, and these were the mistakes that I was doing, and now I can see throughout the years what changed. Yeah, so and I think it's also a great exercise to practice be confident, because people are gonna criticize you, and even if they don't like write bad stuff in your posts, you're gonna eventually be, oh, this post have more likes, or this post have more less likes, and you will eventually, by putting yourself out there, learn to manage how you feel about all this stuff, because it's important. It's important we understand that it's not necessarily the amount of likes that represents how good you are, and a lot of other stuff that you can learn if you put yourself out there. So yeah, I think it's never too early to start to post the
That's
stuff.
right.
It's a great exercise to be confident. Yeah.
So how many years ago are these ones here? Since I know you took a break, you were doing it, you came
Yeah,
back. What are you like,
I took
19, 20 when you're doing these ones?
these ones, it was back in 2016. So 4 years ago, I
Okay.
was 19. Yes. So, and also it's important to notice that back in those days over here, I was practicing like 2 hours a day, and not every day.
Yeah.
So I was like, it took me a long time to learn a lot of stuff here. But back when I learned not only how to study, but how to keep consistent with my studies and, that kind of stuff, I improved way faster, because I was like focused. I have to make my life work around that. I have to, make money. So I was studying like 4 and 5 hours a day, because I still had college stuff to do, and every day. So I was like improving way faster. So Yeah, and back then I also discovered schoolism, which I think for a lot of artists of my generation and probably yours,
Hmm.
it's a huge thing, because a lot of amazing artists were there teaching, and I was like, I remember telling my parents, uh, I found a website where some artists that work on Disney were teaching, and it's online, and I don't have to do some kind of test to be able to study there. And I was super excited. So these drawings here, character design, I know it's not my main thing, but I was like doing the Walter Toop character design course here, which I think it's awesome for environment artists, because I remember I stopped for a while studying environment and focused on character. And when I go back to study environment design, I felt that my design decisions were better,
Hmm.
because if you know that, but for the people listening, when you think about fundamentals and and design and all of that, it's everything basically the same. It's all connected, the same way you think for a character, you think for an environment. It's all about experience, it's all about feeling, conveying ideas throughout shapes and colors, and it works the same for character or environment.
Hmm.
So going to study character made a huge difference on my work. That's just something that I want to point out.
Awesome.
So
Thank you for
after,
sharing.
yeah, so this is a personal project. It's in Portuguese, personal project, but I think this is something that I also want to talk, because sometimes I feel like I have some friends that they study and they keep on studying, and then they never apply what
Yep.
they are studying. And that's super important. So I remember talking to some more experienced artists. They told me, "Oh, you have to pack the things that you have learned and create a personal project around that." So even though I wasn't really a character designer, I was like, okay, I study character. Now I'm going to apply everything that I learned in a project, in a full project, so I can see what are my weaknesses and what I've got better.
Yep.
And that's really helpful. Yeah.
You got
So
to
I did this.
assess. You got to assess and see where the
Yeah,
gaps are and
yes, you have to face. You have to face it. There's
like
no
I was
running.
doing the same thing, and I tell my students to do the same thing too, especially the ones that take like the 8 week or the 8 week courses. Right, you're never going to be able to really process all the information that's given out in such a short or such a quick amount of high volume of information very quickly. It's hard to process. So after the class, build a project and process it all to kind of explore that. And I think this is a great example of that. And that's what I've been doing with those windmills. If I learn a lesson in 3D or something, I'm applying it to multiple things immediately to try to build that consistency to see, okay, what don't I understand? And I think this is such a great example of that.
Yeah, and also incorporate that on your workflow, right? Because when you
Mm-hmm.
see someone teaching, you're basically using their process. But when it comes to you actually using it on your workflow, you end up doing changes and adapting to yourself. So that's
Yep.
also an important step. Yeah. So, quick stop in my story. I back when I was like in college, I remember that I was interested in going back to draw environments, and I stumbled upon this artist that I don't remember his name. I think it's down here. Yeah, Tim
Tim.
Kaminsky. Yeah, and I was like, damn, he's using 3D. And I remember that I was like, man, I'm afraid of 3D because I don't know nothing about 3D, and I think it's super complicated. It's super different from what I like to do, so I never really thought about it. But when I look at this one down here, I was like, man, this looks kind of easy. It's kind of simple, just a bunch of cubes, and you
Mm-hmm.
have lighting, and you can move your camera around. I was like, man, I think I'm gonna give this a chance. And I did. Back then I was not using Blender, I was using the Maya student version. And yeah, that was my first attempt to mix 3D in my workflow. So as you can see
Awesome.
here, I literally take a print out of the Maya viewport and then draw on top of that and paint it,
Keeping
my
it
drawing.
simple.
Yeah, so it's crazy because I think this is one of the things that some people today that are starting out misses, that sometimes you just have to try even if it's not complete, even if it's not like the same as the great artists that you're looking online. Because if I look at that, I mean, he was rendering, and I didn't know how to render, but that did not stop me for trying, you know.
Yep.
So yeah, sometimes you just have to like get excited and try the way you know how to try, you know. And eventually I keep on studying, and I remember that, I think you also remember that, the hype just before the Blender 2.8 release. So I was using Maya, and I
Hmm.
was like in contact with the internet, and people saying, oh, Blender 2.8 is going to come out and it's going to be amazing, you have real-time rendering. So before we jump into my Blender stuff, these were my second piece using Maya. So as you can see, there's a huge difference.
You learned
Uh,
how to render.
yeah, I learned how to render, and
Does
that
Maya
was a
have anything built in, or did you have to go with something external?
what? I'm sorry, I
Does
didn't
Maya have a
understand.
built-in renderer, or did you have to get something
No,
external?
no, it has a built render. Yeah, I was using Arnold back then. Arnold
Oh.
was the official built-in render in Maya, but it was not real time. So that was
Oh.
make me really interested in Blender, because I back then I was not working with art, so I didn't have much money.
Mhm.
So I just had a very weak laptop, and for this image here, I remember it took like an hour and a half to render. Like, so it was not very efficient. And imagine I render after 1 hour and a half, and I look and I was like, damn, I think this doesn't look right. So I have to go back to the modeling, adjust the stuff, like maybe tweak the camera, and then wait another
Hour and a
hour and a
half.
half. Yeah. So I remember back when Blender came out, I was like, damn, Eevee is so fast and so light for my laptop. So that's why I moved to from here to Blender. And also I want to point out that a lot of stuff it's not here, but I kept on studying composition. I kept on doing daily stuff to keep on learning, you know, composition. I also try as part of this project.
You did color keys.
Yeah, I did color keys because I was trying to learn a little bit of storytelling, you know, how to tell a story throughout a sequence of images and composition and color. So it was nice to nice practice. Yeah. So when Blender came out, I was like, okay, I have to learn Blender, and I was getting more and more excited with 3D. You know, I was like modeling probably more than I needed to paint over, but I was enjoying it. So I was like, okay, let me just keep on going. It's fun, and yeah, and then my 3D knowledge became more complex, and I learned way more. These are some studies, and after that, I have these four pieces that I did like last year or in 2018 that
I
I
love all of
used
those. Those are all
only Blender.
awesome.
Yeah, this one I've used Eevee, which is the real-time renderer. This one is Cycles. This one is Cycles, and this one is Cycles too. Because I was still like not really good enough to use the real-time renderer to make it look more realistic. So I was still depending on the ray tracing engine, which is Cycles. So yeah, but after that, I keep on studying and studying, and these are some works I did professionally. I put in here just to, because after studying a while, people reached me, and I finally got into this industry. And I was super happy. This was some backgrounds I painted for a cinematic
Oh, awesome.
video for Free Fire. Yeah, and these are my most recent works using Blender. We can talk a little bit about them and talk about
Yeah.
process as you asked me to do. So yeah, all of those were Blender, and this one has these two actually. They have 3D Code. I model stuff on 3D Code too, which is another soft
That's where I
I've
am
learned.
right now, learning a little bit of 3D code. So much fun. I
Yeah,
overdid it
this
though.
one.
I made way too many faces on my model, so now I got like a got to go back and kind of pull back a little
Nah,
bit.
yeah, I remember I crashed my 3D Code so many times learning the software. Yeah, because it's too powerful. Yeah, so
Kevin's like, there's. You told me there's a stamp with a crack. You can age your ruins up and make bricks fall out of it and stuff. Oh, I like that. This is really old ruins I'm drawing. Stamp it. I'm stamping it everywhere in 3D code. I'm like, bam. I'm literally smashing my model with like a hammer. It's like this is gonna look great. And then I got it back, to Blender, and it's like it doesn't
yeah,
want to. Oh boy.
Blender just crashed. Yeah. But man, yeah, that was a journey. We went over it fast, but yeah, I did a lot of stuff. I can actually show briefly here. Let me just.
Yeah,
I
do
have a folder here called studies, and I have so many other stuff that no one have seen. So a lot of
you got us into
um.
their
char-
dirty laundry on your files. Look at that.
yeah, I have so many ugly stuff. I remember
Look
this
at
one. I took a picture of myself out in the sun to understand how the shadow in Sunday works, you know.
yeah.
And this is so like, look at that.
It just
But
needs
yeah,
some teeth just showing under there, like you know.
yeah, yeah. I have so many movie
That's
stills that I studied to understand color. These are back when I was not using 3D.
hmm
So I have my Nathan Folks assignments that I did when I was studying in schoolism
so
and daily warm-ups.
for the last several years, then you've been kind of training 3D and 2D fairly equally. Is that true?
Yeah, I think more 2D. Just the last 2 years I've been going to 3D more than 2D. But
hmm
before that it was only 2D.
And now your images, you can't tell. It just looks like magic on screen, which is great.
Magic. 3D, as you said to
You
me
gotta blend
before,
it.
it's a huge cheat, you know. It's
Cheat.
mega
Yep.
cheating.
Yeah, if you know color and composition, it mega
Yeah,
cheat.
yeah. That is important to point out. If you don't have your basics covered, 3D is not gonna do any good. It's just gonna look
The 3D
bad.
always will like either over detail something, it'll make something look too fake, it'll make something look too stiff, it'll
Yeah,
miss
or
artistic
your
details that you need to add in manually,
yeah.
but you gotta
I
understand
actually
it.
I have this for this image. I have it. Let me just find it over. Where is it?
Oh, awesome.
I have so many stuff to show you here.
Kevin's brought the
Yeah, there
goods
you go.
today. Oh,
So
wow.
this is the 3D version of it, and this is the final paint over. So as you can see, I actually in some areas I take some things out because it's too noisy, you know. So like looking for composition, I exaggerated some values in some areas to make your eyes go there. So yeah, that's. But
Awesome.
sometimes I like to push like way a lot in 3D and then just paint a little bit, like this one.
Yeah.
This one, I think this is like 95% 3D and 5% painting. You know, because I've pushed so much in 3D, and I like to have the ability to do that because in different projects you have different needs, and
Yeah,
sometimes
flexibility.
yes, that's something that helps you get more work. I have the 3D here. You can compare the 3D with the paint over.
Yep. I
So
still need to take that tutorial that you need to publish about how to get that
yeah,
texture. I will
I'm
buy
going.
that and send everybody your way. So if you need to make some side bucks for the holiday season, make that tutorial a thing, and I'll buy that up.
Yeah, I'm working on a tutorial right now on how to do image like this one. It's gonna be
Okay.
available this year at the
Yeah.
December. It's gonna be great. But yeah, so I'm enjoying so much. Now I have a powerful computer, right? We were talking about the days
Yep.
where I
That's
had
my
just a
next goal.
laptop. Yeah, now I have a really powerful 3D. I'm actually looking to buy that new GP card,
Which one?
the
The three?
3009.
Is that
Yeah,
1500 US? The last
I don't. I
it's
super expensive.
I
Yeah.
was gonna get it, and then I looked at the price, and I was like, that might be overkill. Like that was my whole budget for the computer, and it was just for the
Yeah,
card.
it's super overkill. I'm not sure if I'm gonna buy it like right now, but in the future,
Like,
100%. I've been looking for some artists that work with 3D, and they are rendering in ray tracing engines, and it looks like it's a real time engine because it's
yeah,
super fast. Yeah, it's insane. But yeah, so you asked me to talk a little bit about my process today
yeah,
after all these years studying. So right now, for work, I have a specific process, and I want to talk a little bit about that because sometimes I think I see this a lot with my students.
mm-hmm,
They are looking so hard for a process that
yep,
will give them the best results and it's going to be amazing. But I think sometimes as creatives as we are as artists, if you look too hard for a process and a stiff one, you probably kill a little bit your creativity.
Yeah.
because yeah, you're just going to stiff the process, and sometimes different ideas and different projects require different approaches, you know. So when it comes to my personal stuff, uh sometimes I start a whole piece like this one with a really simple idea, and I actually have here how
Yep.
this idea started. I remember I was talking to you
Yep.
that was going to study shaders, and I was messing around with nodes, trying to come up with a fun procedural shader here in 3D, and I finally came up with this one, and I was like, man, this looks nice, looks some sort of alien architecture. I think I'm gonna try to do a whole piece around circles and spheres. And that was the idea, you know. I
Yep.
did not think about a super deep and complex storytelling. I did not did a super deep research on architecture. I just had this simple idea. And after like modeling and tweaking things a little bit, I came up with this, which is literally just a bunch of circles. You know, I have this circle
Hmm.
ground here with circle textures and this portal here. So I like that because sometimes we overthink things, you know. And the
We
fact
do.
that when I'm doing personal projects, I'm not like looking to use the same process that I use for work. It gives me the freedom to experiment and came up with different approaches and different ideas. So yeah, that's it. But for
I
my
love it.
work stuff, what I do is I start with explorations. I like to keep it simple, just some lines and thumbnailing and shapes.
With
Of
these,
course,
okay, are these something that a client is going to see, or are these just for you?
this is some clients that I've worked. They like to see this kind of stuff, but
Yeah.
you kind of have to figure out which type of client you're dealing with. Some clients
Yep.
they like to see things fancy right from the beginning. So that it depends on the project, but for my personal process, this is what I do. I do this once, and I also do some more detail it. Um, if the project requires, right? Sometimes you're going to
Hmm.
have some people that are going to model the stuff and they need to know what the texture looks like and some reference. So I do some of that too. And yeah, some more. Actually, for this one, I use 3D. I like to use 3D in the early stage too, just to block things out really quickly and then draw over that, because to model all of that would take like way more time than just drawing. So these
Yeah.
are just a bunch of cubes and then I draw over that.
I
And
think
then
that,
finally, I do the final illustration. Sorry?
yeah, I was going to say the key word there is experience. So that way, that's the only way you'll know what is worth your time, either drawing, painting,
Yes.
when to jump in. And the only way to get that experience is just to make loads and loads and loads of pictures and not, and right, and failing a lot, and learning along the way.
Yes. And with projects, because like you want to put the things in scale and see like, okay, so if I'm going to do an entire illustration, what I need to get there fast, you know? And for each different assignment you were given in the project, you have different needs, you know? So, oh, I have to do some callouts. Okay, these are for this specific thing. This is great. But for example, for an illustration, I'll probably never do callouts because it's
Yeah.
just an illustration, you know? It's, for example, card game. I would never do callouts and do prop explorations for just a card game, you know? But for like if you're working on a game industry and you have to like do setting designs, you probably have to do that.
Yep.
Yeah, so I have more examples here. So these are some more explorations for this painting here. I like to play a lot with simple shapes, yeah, and just I like to think a lot of strokes and simple
Yeah,
shapes
those are
using
great.
a lot lasso too. And I like to do some notes here, like this one, because sometimes you're just generating ideas, and after all of they were like, okay, but I don't remember what I did like about each of them. So I like to do some quick notes on what is working and what is not working, and more explorations of things that I think are important for the project.
Taking
Yeah,
the time to analyze, like, and reflect on that, I think is something I don't see enough of my students do. And you always have to encourage that. It's not just
yeah.
pen or pen to the paper, constant drawing. You got to pull back, right? And you got to look and you got to think about things just as much.
Yes. It's kind of after a while it's kind of obvious, right? But when you're
Yeah.
just starting out, it doesn't seem that obvious, and I get that. Yeah, as more as I mature as an artist, as more I take time thinking more than necessarily drawing, you know? Because if you just like draw mindlessly, it's just not going to work. You
Yeah.
have to think what you're aiming and what are your needs. Yeah.
Getting a lot of mileage without a destination in mind is useless mileage. You could draw
Yeah.
8 hours a day, but if you don't have a goal, if you're not focused, if you're distracted during the 8 hours of practice, the practice is worthless.
Yes. And if you have like 1 hour of really focused and thinking about what you're doing, is way worth more worth than like 8 hours thinking nothing. And after those 8 hours, you're just gonna end up frustrated,
Yeah.
and it's gonna make you like, oh, maybe I don't like drawing anymore. I actually thought that in the past because I was like doing that. But I think this part of the early mistakes we do as we grow as an artist. You try and you hit your head in walls, but if you keep on going, eventually you're gonna make the clicks in your head and be like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
I was so stupid back then, but now I understand. Yeah. I think it's at the end of the day, it's all about not giving up
Yeah, you
and
gotta
keep
you
on
gotta
going.
keep at
This
it,
you have to keep at it. Yeah.
regardless of the negative comments or the lack of likes or your own
Yes.
situation. Like sometimes we're our own worst enemy. We overthink things. Sometimes you just gotta, just create and enjoy that creating process.
Talking about negative comments, I remember back when I was using DeviantArt, I posted one drawings and someone commented like, "This is so garbage. The
Ooh,
proportions are so wrong," and it was like super unnecessary. And I remember I felt really sad, but at the
unnecessary
end of
feedback, man.
yeah, yeah, some people are out there doing that kind of stuff. But what I made me realize that I should not care for that because I was doing art not at the first place not to make people like my art, but because I do like to make art. I think this is something that we have to keep in mind. Uh, why you do art? I do art because I like to do art, not necessarily because I'm trying to please someone else. Yeah. Of course, we're trying to please people and to make beautiful things for other people to like, but at the end of the day, we like to engage in this process of creating. So if you focus on that, you're probably going to be more relaxed and focused, and you're going to enjoy it way more. Yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. You have to enjoy it and not be putting. I think it's right the pressure that people cave under. That's
yeah,
where you can get into trouble, and it sucks because some of us have maybe a real life deadline. Maybe there is parental pressure, or
yeah, yeah,
but it's managing that pressure because I think all of us have that pressure. It's what you do with it, how you react to it, is what makes or breaks someone becoming, like, I guess, a professional artist or a lifelong artist in that regard.
yeah. I remember back when I was in a art event in Brazil, and there was this like super experienced artist, and we were talking in private after his speech. And he told me that after a lot of years, he realized that becoming a better artist, it's also becoming a better human.
Mm,
Because and I was like, man, this is super interesting because in order to do great art, you have to be patient. But being patient is a good thing as a human being. And
yes.
in many levels, yes, as you were saying, like sometimes you have a in your family's problems and you have to deal with that while you were trying to become an artist. And if you keep on and persevering, you probably end up being a more comprehensible human being, a more patient one, a good listener, because you're listening to your thoughts while you're drawing.
Hmm.
Maybe you're gonna listen to people in real life. That for me, that is super mind blowing, super interesting. I know there are some amazing artists out there. There are not good people. That can happen because
Okay.
at the end of the day, yeah, it's just technical knowledge.
Yes.
But I think most people, at least from my experience, from all the artists that I've met, they are really all good people.
Yeah.
I until today, I did not have any bad experience with an artist, and this is super cool.
That is super
Thank God for
cool.
that. Yeah.
And that's why too. On that note, I just started, lately to embrace Blender because the community is so welcoming and they're so patient and they're so, like, I can go on Facebook, for example. I can post a Blender question, show a screenshot, say, hey, I don't know how to do this. within 10 minutes I will have 5 replies with people more than welcome to kind of share a solution for that problem. And it's for someone like me that I get frustrated very quickly learning software. I don't have enough time to learn it. It's been very awesome and eye-opening to help me kind of embrace a new process and technique like that is the community
Yeah,
and the
that is
artists.
awesome. I think this is also because Blender, since it's open source software and it's free, the community embrace it so much, right? Everyone
Mm-hmm.
is helping each other, and that is amazing. You have tons. This is something that I didn't mention while I was going through my journey, but the fact that Blender has so many free tutorials on YouTube helped so much to learn it fast. Because when I was using Maya, you just don't have
Yep.
that. It's a super expensive software, and you don't have that many tutorials for free out there. So
It
yeah,
was like that when I dabbled in Cinema 4D for years. When I tried Moto, in 2016, I tried them all too, and I always got
really, I
frustrated.
didn't know that. Did you actually try the Moto?
Yeah, I did a couple scenes in it, and it was getting stuck and not knowing how to get it fixed or progress, and it's all technical stuff. So
It's super frustrating. Yeah, you just like get stuck for weeks on some stuff because you
yep,
just don't know how to find. Yeah.
it halts your ideas, it halts your projects, and you gotta okay pivot around it and find a workaround. But yeah, Blender has been a great learning experience for me, anyways.
Yes, and the fact that it's open source and at least the concept art community embraced it. So many people are working to make it like more friendly for concept artists, and you have like different add-ons. Because if you're going to use like for instance Maya, you don't have that. You don't have like add-ons to make things work just for concept art. But in Blender you have that. For example, you have Jama doing all the sorts of add-ons that
Quick
make
shape,
things
quick
faster. Yeah,
curve.
it doesn't work for traditional 3D,
No.
but it's perfect for concept art. So I think that's a huge thing too that Blender has. Yeah.
Ha- Yeah. Do you, with a lot of your scenes now, are you still sketching them out before you get into 3D for like composition, or do you prefer to find your compositions within the 3D?
Man, I actually came up with a different process recently. Back I was using thumbnailing, but let me open here. I have actually came up with a process that it's I think other artists use it, but I tried myself and it worked great for me. Let me just quickly grab here. I was teaching my students actually last week about this process, which is do your thumbnailing and composition sketch
Mm-hmm.
in 3D with simple shapes. And I think it works great because I can came up with like great lighting and just simple shapes and composition in like 30 minutes, which is great. And you can just after that model
Replace
over.
the assets, add
Yes,
textures, blockouts. I
yes.
think they go and I don't know if you have a lot of clients. Like I've gotten clients plenty in the past where they that's what they give you is those scenes made up of cylinders and cubes, and they're like, make this ruins or make this a city block,
Yeah,
and you got to draw
yeah.
or paint over it, or maybe even recreate it at this point in 3D to do it.
Yeah, I did this one in, yeah, as I was saying, 30 minutes. It's just loading the whole thing. Yeah. So what I do today is I use a lot of the Blender tools that make things faster, like arrays and stuff like that. So if you look at those, I
Hmm.
don't know how to say in English, asteroids. I think it's
Yeah,
asteroids, right? Yeah,
asteroids.
so they are not like really artistic. They are just the same repeated. But I can, after getting my composition and my story right, I can just go back and model and do some change. So look at that in 30
Yep.
minutes. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And the shapes are simple, like this spaceship is just a bunch of. Let me just isolate here on the viewport. Yeah, just a bunch of circles and some. I use a symmetry to make it. Uh, yeah.
That is
So
awesome.
this is the process that I'm trying out. Actually, I'm going to finish this piece. I think I told you.
You gonna
I'm
paint it or
modeling.
texture it?
No, I'm going to model. I'm creating a whole design and doing thumbnailing. Like this here. I'm doing
Yep.
this part of the process, but for the spaceship. And after I got the design right, I'm going to model it and just put in this scene because here the proportions and the atmosphere and the lighting are
It's
already
all
working. Yeah, it's all working.
So yeah, you're going to
So
replace the assets with better assets.
Yes, yeah, exactly, and then paint over that. I have some other. Wait, I think I just opened this. Okay, so this is another one. I have a Castle sketch, which is yeah. So the process
Similar.
is yeah, the process is pretty simple. I think my HDR is messed up here. Let me just see. I'm just putting
So you got the
HDR.
you got the VDB clouds going. You have an
No, it's
atmosphere.
not. It's
That's
not
not.
VDB
Is that
clouds.
just a
It's
regular volume?
image as plainness. No, it's image as plainness. I'm trying to be as
Efficient.
quick as possible. Yeah, yeah. I'm not really concerned with aesthetics, you know. My focus when doing this style of sketches is not black and white, value structure to get my
Hmm.
composition and what I want to be read and what I want to be not be read, you know. So I have a character here. I have my what is going
Cast.
to be a castle. Yeah,
Yep.
there. So yeah.
And
Uh,
you didn't. How much of this idea would you say was in your head before jumping into, like, you're just like, okay, I need to do bridge, mountains, castlescape. Like, is that was that as far as the thought, in your head,
okay. I think
or did
the
you draw
idea that I
this?
no, I did not draw this. I was like, I want to have a huge bridge with a castle on top of some mountain
Hmm.
where you cannot see the bottom of it because it's super high. And I want to make it medieval. I want to make it Ghiblish like, and have a character. So it's pretty simple thought process. It's not really.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think because for me at least, I kind of discover what I want from each piece throughout the process. And
Hmm.
I don't know because I've seen a lot of artists out there talking about having your idea ready and before you go to actually do it. But for me, it never works this way because I'm never 100% sure about what I want of a piece. You know, even I think even the clients don't really know when you're working.
Yeah.
Like,
Those
imagine
are
if
the
you work on a
toughest ones, right? Like, the ones that don't know what they want.
yeah, but I don't mean
uh,
these ones. I mean, like, if you're working in like let's say a Disney movie,
yep.
when the artists come to do the visual development or the early stage, the pre-production, no one really knows exactly what it's going to look like, right? So it's a lot of experimental, and that's what I do with my pieces. I mean, I have the idea. I have like I need a castle, and I want it to be peaceful. I'm not doing a violent scene or an action scene. Of course, obviously, I have this in mind, but I don't know exactly how the architecture is going to look like. And
Hmm.
after I have this done, after that I'm going to look for, okay, so this is going to be what type of architecture is going to be. Is this going to be a seat underneath that, a city underneath that, or is going to be just the castle and some ruins this side? It's going to be a forest over this side. So I it's kind of like a conversation with my piece, and I like the freedom,
Hmm.
because I think if I have everything right in my head before going to do that, it's boring. It's just boring because I'm not experimenting anything. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I like to have things very open in the beginning, and slowly I'm going to put in boxes, and deciding what
Yeah.
each thing is going to be. Yeah.
Somewhat. I go back and forth all the time. Sometimes, right, I'll carefully sketch something out, and then just kind of toss something together like this, and I allow myself to pivot the direction of the idea if I
Yeah.
see something that I think can work better. But I do say it's best not to, or that's why in a traditional world, right, you'd recommend someone not to get caught up on the first thumbnail, or not to,
Yeah.
get attached to an earlier one too soon, because they're the best things happen when you are playing a little bit, and when you allow yourself that freedom to kind of put some of that stuff
The happy
together.
mistakes, right?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
also, I just remember that for this type of approach, there is one thing. Uh, as you can see, if I wanted to do like in the same scene a different shot, it would not work because look, it's just
Yeah.
fake stuff and things are floating. So if
Every
yeah, if
3D set ever for 2D artists, right?
yeah, but sometimes I do model the whole set because I like to play.
Different angles.
Yes, yes, and I think if I was not happy with this composition here, I would just go out here and try to think of another angle and then model what it needs to be modeled to, to
Mm-hmm.
don't look totally fake. And yeah, I think that's it. But as I was saying, I'm still experimenting with this process.
Yeah.
Because like if to do this thing it took me like 20 minutes, I can do in an hour 3 of those with different angles and maybe different stories, and it's gonna be like way faster after I decided, because I just have to model and place things and you know switch with the placeholder now. Let's call it placeholder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can make those rectangles almost any architectural style that or cultural style that will
Yes,
fit that
exactly.
mold. So it could be Roman, it could
Yeah.
be
It
Egyptian,
doesn't need to
could
be
be
this distribution of big and smalls. I can like literally do different distribution of shapes here, but the point is the composition is working because I have my castle on the thirds, the lighting's there, I have the contrast there, I have my lines pointing there. So yeah, but I do when I have to do some black and white thumbnails, I have some here. I can show you. Let me
awesome.
find here.
And then we'll end on that note because I got to run out in 6 minutes to get my kid at
Sure,
daycare.
man. I talk so much.
No, that's fine. I'm gonna
Got
edit
too
this little bit
excited.
out. I just wanted to give you because I lose track of time. I'm enjoying all your tricks here.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so let me find here. Okay, so these are some black and white studies that I do for fun. You
Oh,
know,
awesome.
I like to keep it like with hard edges. Hard brush. No texture, no soft edges. Just because for me, and probably for you too, composition is all about the contrast, right? At
Mm,
least the most
yep.
important part is about the contrast. Yeah. So if I have my contrast right, I can pretty much later on model the whole thing and adjust. But as you asked, the good thing about 3D is that you can play and you can move your camera around. So
Get
sometimes,
different shapes of contrast too.
yeah. So sometimes I don't do a thumbnailing at all. I just have an idea and I do some prop explorations on 2D, and then I go straight into 3D, model kind of the set, and try to find my composition in 3D. I don't, because you have so many, uh, you can experiment so much, right? Because you can tweak your camera
Well,
angle and tweak. Yeah.
Well, you have many processes, you have a lot of pieces, and I think that's one of my favorite parts. But no matter how flexible you are, your work has a very consistent look to it, and I definitely admire that. Even my own stuff kind of goes in different directions sometimes, but you have a very definitive Kevin sort of look to your work, and
To
I
be
do love
honest, I don't think I have.
more than
If
you
you're
think.
saying, well,
You need
that's
that
nice to know.
outside perspective to see that. And I see that.
Yeah,
I know when I there's a piece of yours out there. I know which one it is now. I see your stuff. I like it.
probably some unconscious decisions that I'm making.
Yeah.
Unconscious is the right word. I think it is. Yeah, unconscious decisions that I don't really know that I'm doing, but I'm probably doing that make it. It's yes, that's great that you mentioned that, because a lot. I mean, like a lot in my process is intuitive. Even though I
Mm-hmm.
got my bases covered when it comes to perspective, color and light, and the principles, I also use a lot of my intuition when it comes to make my art. Sometimes I look to my piece and I'm like, okay, this is not there, and I don't know why. And I keep on trying things until my intuitive side look and feel the ease of,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is working. And yeah, I think that's pretty much for all of us. Like we use a lot
Yeah.
of our intuition. Yeah.
That's a lot of it, and because you can't rely entirely on the technical, because then
Yeah, you
you'll just
cannot.
kind of become boring. You'll wash out. It'll just be formulaic to a fault.
Yes, it's gonna be stiff. Yeah, how you're gonna really express something so not tangible as emotions, right? You have to be
Yes.
feeling while you're creating. Yeah, that's amazing.
So Kevin, I'm
Yeah.
gonna have links to all your stuff below this video. You get your art station. You're on Instagram posting all the time. Anything else you want to share in terms of link wise? I'll add that below.
No, I think the ArtStation Instagram is
You
okay. I
don't want me to
post.
link your DV? We could hotkey up your DeviantArt and
Oh,
put
I
that up.
don't use it anymore actually.
Okay, I'll add that
After
in.
that bad experience. All right.
So, guys, if you have questions for myself or Kevin, or just want to let Kevin know what you think of his work, absolutely comment below. We'd love to hear back from you. And you guys all take care. Thank you, Kevin, for coming on. It's been a pleasure to
Thank you
finally
for
have you
inviting
on.
me.